So let's talk about how this whole thing started. So you and I actually got in touch right after you were canceled, and maybe you can tell that story about how that went down.
I was just basically going to put the covers over my head for about a month. And my manager was calling me. He said, Ben Shapiro is trying to get in touch with you. And actually, so then I'm like, well, this is interesting. Okay, so Ben's going to get a hold of me. So we got on the phone, and you basically said, you have to punch back, and you have to punch back immediately. You have to fight this. And it took me out of the place that I was in, which was, oh my gosh, my life is never going to be the same. I'm going to just completely have to deal with this whenever I can get myself up again. But you helped me kind of get motivated to punch back. And
like you need $1 billion.
So the obvious next question is,
where's Hunter? I can remember getting paid some money, but I can't remember what for. Well, my dad says we never discuss my businesses, period. Or my cut.
What's happening in there? Joe's in on it.
I love my dad, and I just want to make him proud.
So get woke, go broke has been the slogan of conservatives everywhere for about 4 years, probably longer. But today I wanted to talk about the tragedy of Gina Carano, someone who went anti-woke and now pretty much can't find a job in Hollywood. Now, of course, this would be a very easy story to make loads of jokes about, to enjoy and everything. But at the end of the day, this is just one individual. And there is criticisms to Hollywood's takes on politics and the Hollywood bubble of liberal elite politics. But in the case of Gina Carano, I don't think that is as relevant, because a new Hollywood Reporter interview/profile has come out where she basically revealed all about everything she said and about internal discussions within Disney, about how she could rectify the situation. And the main thing that came across to me in this profile is that she's just very dumb and also has a big ego, which means she won't back down. And while that might have served her well as an MMA fighter, seems to not serve her that well as an actress who wants to work. And also what this story reveals is, with conservative media, there isn't much loyalty anyway, because it seems like they've all dumped her as well, because she was in that terrible Ben Shapiro movie, Terror on the Prairie, made by the Daily Wire. Then she was in a Breitbart movie called My Son Hunter, playing some bodyguard. 2 movies that, didn't do that well. And one was just pretty much conservative propaganda. A lot of conservatives who even love the Daily Wire didn't like this movie. And I guess what that shows is, if you are conservative in Hollywood and have really terrible opinions that you're publicly going to post on your social media platform, you better hope you're talented enough that people will still hire you after that. Because if you're not talented enough, then what's your fallback? And Gina Carano really fell into a path to relative stardom, and it was all set up for her to take the next step because she was going to get her own Disney Plus show, only for it to all come crashing down. Because not only did she post pretty awful things on social media, after a lot of warnings, she continued to post. In essence, it seemed like she was trying to provoke the company that employed her, and then they did basically not rehire her for any future Disney products. So all of that coming up for you today. Follow me on social media at the Kavernacle, mainly on Instagram and my travel Instagram these days, also on Threads and Blue Sky, and also check out my Patreon if you want to support my work. And you can get access to the private patrons Discord server through that. So before we get into the Hollywood Reporter profile, which is very insightful about everything, including her own conversations with Pedro Pascal, let's just talk about her rise. So she was in a lot of notable stuff, like Fast and Furious 6, Deadpool, which, most people probably recognize her from. And obviously she was in the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian and had a pretty prominent role. And she talks about in the Hollywood Reporter article, basically Jon Favreau was saying, she was going to basically become a star after, I think it's the Rangers of the New Republic show that was going to come out. So everything was looking very bright for Gina Carano's future. Then, of course, she just couldn't help herself on social media, and she ends up making The Terror on the Prairie and My Son Hunter 2 years ago. Both movies, like I said, received very poorly. One's a Daily Wire exclusive. One, I don't even know where you could have watched this. So yeah, and if you look at what's on for the future, and from the article, it seems like nothing. So she basically ruined her career. And why I find that funny is conservatives like herself preach so much about individualism, talk so much about free market capitalism, and in that you'd think that they take responsibility for their own actions, but what she's doing now is she's teaming up with Elon Musk to sue Disney for her firing, basically. I don't know how far that's really going to go. I don't know what it takes to even get like a little settlement from these things. But if you guys need some reminding of what she actually did, I'm going to remind you, because this saga has been playing out over the years, and thankfully a lot of websites have been putting out articles reminding us because of the Hollywood Reporter article. So what did Gina Carano tweet that got her fired by Ash Martinez? A controversial online presence gained traction in 2020 during the pandemic. She was a vocal opponent of mask mandates. Her Instagram and Twitter posts were mostly stupid memes, but people were dying from COVID. 350k Americans died of the disease alone in 2020. Many right-wing talking heads flouted safety procedures and declared mask mandates violations of free speech. The US Court of Appeals ruled in February 2024 that medical mandates don't fall under the protection of the First Amendment. Carano pushed the narrative. A vocal Republican, she frequently used her platform to espouse her political ideas, from endorsing the voter fraud conspiracy around the 2020 election, which you see a tweet here talking about, put laws in place that protect us from voter fraud, investigate every state, film the counting, flush out the fake votes, require ID, make voter fraud end in 2020, fix the system. So basically saying Joe Biden stole the election. Carano found herself in hot water after starting beef over the BLM movement on Twitter. A commentator told Carano that protesters were trying to educate you so you can get on the right side of history, and she said, in my experience, screaming at someone that they're racist when they're not, and any post and or research you will do show these exact facts, and I'm sorry, people are not educators, they're cowards and bullies. And something she's been talking about a lot is how everyone who's left-wing is a bully. Despite warnings and by her own admission, Disney repeatedly required her to review documentaries on any of these topics or speak to individuals. She continued to dig herself into a hole. She refused to use pronouns in her Twitter bio, and then she addressed the issue by putting beep, bop, boop in her profile in response. Then the hashtag Fire Gina Carano basically went viral. And basically the main thing that led her to ruining her career was she started saying being a conservative in 2020 is like being a Jewish person in Germany in the 1930s and 40s. So yeah, not a very bright person. And then recently, in February, she announced that she's suing Disney. And she says, today's an important day for me. I'm filing a lawsuit against Lucasfilm and Disney. After 20 years of building a career from scratch and during the regime of former Disney CEO Bob Chapek, Lucasfilm made the statement on Twitter that Gina Carano is currently not employed by Lucasfilm and there are no plans for her to be in the future. Nevertheless, her social media posts denigrating people based on their cultural and religious identities are abhorrent and unacceptable. Nothing could be further from the truth. The truth was I was being hunted down from everything I posted to every post I liked because I was not in line with the acceptable narrative of the time. My words were consistently twisted to demonize and dehumanize me as an alt-right, right-wing extremist. It was a bullying smear campaign aimed at silencing, destroying, and making an example out of me. The thing is, I never even used aggressive language. I shared thought-provoking quotes, pictures, memes, and occasionally my own words, not of aggression, but of respect and the occasional comedy to keep the mood light in dark times. Also, she did share like an anti-Semitic meme as well, which I didn't actually show you before. I would like to express my deepest gratitude and thank you to Elon Musk for giving me the opportunity to bring the case to light. As for me, I would love to pick up where I left off and continue my journey of creating and participating in storytelling, which is my utmost passion and everything I work so hard for. It's been difficult to move forward with the lies and labels stuck on me, backed and encouraged by the most powerful entertainment company in the world. I am grateful someone has come to my defense in such a powerful way and look forward to clearing my name. So again, for these individualistic conservatives who always talk about responsibility, talk about free market capitalism, and if you don't like it, go somewhere else. If you don't like woke stuff, stop watching Disney stuff. Well, apparently now it's all their fault for basically ruining her career. Now, I watched this clip a while ago of Ben Shapiro talking to her before Terror on the Prairie came out, and it seemed like he swooped in straight away. And like I said, I think she's just very impressionable and dumb and listens to the wrong people. So straight away, you have someone like Ben Shapiro after this come in, just say all this stuff to you, probably promises you that he'll help you make a career still. And then obviously what he's done now and his company have done, they've basically gotten rid of her. And she's listening to that, so she probably really played in hard to like, I am a conservative, I don't care about like making movies with these giant Hollywood corporations and stuff. And then realizing suddenly, oh, like, well, those movies didn't do well. No one else is hiring me in the conservative movement. so I have to sue Disney, basically. What she believes in, like, clearing her name. But everyone can see the stuff you tweeted and posted. And like I said, there are conservatives who work in Hollywood still who do tweet similar terrible shit and do tweet a lot of nonsense, like Tim Allen or, you know, sometimes even James Woods. And because they have some sort of talent to them and probably have some connection still, they still get jobs sometimes, right? And you have Mel Gibson, who obviously said stuff far worse than Gina Carano. But again, Hollywood studios don't care as much with him because he's so talented, where they think the negative PR is worth it to get him on a project with Gina Carano because she's not that talented an actress and she tweeted a lot of horrible shit. A lot of companies would think, like, you know, why should we have that headache? And like I was saying earlier in the video, I agree there is a Hollywood like bubble and a corporate bubble, and it is corporate liberalism. Someone like Chris Evans, for example, super famous Hollywood actor, liberal guy, absolutely hates Donald Trump. It's clear from his old tweets and stuff, and that's totally fine. Pedro Pascal as well hates Donald Trump, tweets about that. That's fine for Pedro as well. But I don't think these people, firstly, push it far enough, where if you're tweeting anti-Semitic memes and comparing being a conservative to being a Jew in Germany in the 30s, that is way more inflammatory than stuff these guys have said from the left-wing point of view. But also, as much as I wish more left-wing people like Pedro Pascal would say more, it's pretty clear, even as someone who does say good stuff like him, he is conscious of his own career, especially someone who's recently risen to like absolute massive fame through The Last of Us and The Mandalorian, in that even with the Palestine stuff, he didn't basically tweet anything for ages, didn't post anything, says some stuff about Chile, said some stuff about socialism in the past, but again, even with him, he probably knows, I can't start tweeting everything I believe because then I'll be out of a job pretty quick. And you see this a lot in Hollywood, and Rowan Blanchard, that, you know, former Disney Channel actress, she actually said that a lot of people in Hollywood are scared to tweet in support of Palestine. So yeah, you have that liberal elite in Hollywood, and you have people like Chris Evans who star in like films about Mossad, and that's all well and good. Star in films about the Israeli intelligence service, and that's not controversial. But people tweeting about Palestine is just the worst thing ever, or people being like openly very, very left wing, like maybe Susan Sarandon, is of course looked down upon by these people. But if you want to exist in the Hollywood bubble, yeah, tweeting loads of anti-Semitism and racism, even if you didn't think it was, is a good way to get yourself fired. But now we're going to get into the recent interview. This came out last week, March 14th. Gina Carano on getting sacked from Star Wars and her grudge match with Disney. So it's basically, like, I think, a very flattering profile of her. And what came across to me most in this, like I said at the start, was she's just not very bright, but also has a massive ego. So she had lots of opportunity to salvage her career despite the numerous controversies. It's actually the last thing she said about the conservatives basically being Jews in Germany. That's what pushed it too far after everything. And you're going to get the sense in some of the bits I'm going to read you is she was trying to provoke them because of her ego. And if you come at it from a conservative point of view, why isn't she holding herself accountable for her actions? Like, she knows these giant corporations like Disney, they don't accept stuff like this. Regardless if you think that's okay or not, they just don't. And for better or worse, most people know that. So you can't play victim when you tweet stuff like that no one else is basically saying, like really inflammatory stuff, and then they don't hire you again. So let's read some of this by Seth Abramovich. So talking about her firing, she says, I just lay down and cried and cried. I got into a fetal position. It's not that I didn't think something like this could happen. It was that I couldn't imagine they would put out this horrendous statement about working with me, the most powerful entertainment company in the world, saying that about me. She said she bought an RV, drove across the country, and then met with Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring. They hired her for the film Terror on the Prairie. So talking about the lawsuit with Elon Musk's funding, she says, I think it's pretty incredible what he's doing. A lot of billionaires put their money into buying islands and building bunkers. Elon Musk is using his money to fight massive injustice battles. It probably also helps that Elon Musk is like a massive anti-Semite who has tweeted stuff similar to what you posted, but because obviously he owns the companies, he's not employed by them, he doesn't have to worry about being fired. But Carano saying you become unhireable, and then it becomes okay for people to disrespect you, and then you're just carrying around the disrespect, and you're shouldering all this shame, and it affects your physicality, your mentality. You're just kind of hopeless. So to be able to fight back, it makes me feel like, okay, that's good. I find this very ironic as well, because if you guys aren't aware, she spent a lot of time on the anti-SJW nerd circuit of YouTube, with people who whip up hate against basically women and minorities in Star Wars. And she says this: Carano has not seen the rebooted Star Wars trilogy, but she followed some of the bullying faced by other castmates of what she calls the family. She noticed that they seemed hurt by their experience, referring to Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and Kelly Marie Tran, all of whom were subjected to racist and misogynistic taunts online. I saw a lot of pain and I didn't know what it was. In my naive perspective, I thought it was between the people who like the old movies and the new movies. I find that so funny that she's part of the movement and she's put herself in the crowd of people who whip up all this harassment against other people, and it's kind of like saying she's sympathetic to what they faced based on her own experience. But Daisy Ridley, Kelly Marie Tran, and John Boyega, they didn't tweet anything to get this on them. They simply were just a woman or a minority group in the West in a Star Wars film. That's what got them hate. John Boyega was literally targeted just because he was black. I remember at the time, there were literally people saying it was unrealistic to have a black stormtrooper in a franchise like Star Wars, just the most insane thing ever. She pleads ignorance with the anti-Semitic memes she posted and stuff. So the article says, Disney and Lucasfilm watched these controversies unfold with concern, but it was the boop, bop, beep incident, like the pronouns one, that launched what she calls a massive meltdown behind the scenes. It erupted after Carano resisted online pressure to put pronouns in her bio. Carano maintained she was never trying to mock the trans community. I've had male publicists with the same size feet as me and we run around in my shoes and try on my dresses. I don't know if that really helps your case at all. I was just fed up, so I was like, fine, I'll put something in my bio. I thought it was cute. Talking about men wearing dresses while you're trying to say you're not transphobic, I mean, it's definitely a take. The Lucasfilm and Disney HR department did not find it the least bit cute, and that subjected Carano to what she described as a re-education camp. It began with a Zoom meeting with 2 transgender representatives from GLAAD. It was a lovely conversation. They said, I'm so sorry you stepped on a landmine. I listened to them and they listened to me. It was sweet and it was fun. But she says the company also wanted an apology. You know, one of those statements that almost makes you roll your eyes. Carano says HR wanted her publicist to craft it. She offered to write it on her own. After several days of back and forth edits, Lucasfilm ultimately felt the final statement wasn't contrite enough and abandoned the effort. According to Carano, there were no more media training sessions after that. Just she claims an order to attend a Zoom meeting along with 45 members of Disney and Lucasfilm's LGBTQ affinity group, which she says she declined. I said, can I take 5 or 6 of these trans leaders to dinner? I'll pay for it. They denied it. They were very upset. They said the meeting would be a litmus test. I'm not even sure what that means. Prior to this incident, Pedro Pascal, who has a trans sister, had laid out the basics of the trans movement for Carano. He was telling me, just put trans rights in your feed, do it, and they'll leave you alone. Carano didn't take his advice. Because that's not my style to put a hashtag anything, she explains. I'm not going to put hashtag Trump's rights. The two had a subsequent conversation amid the backlash. Me and Pedro were so close. He knows 1000% I'm not homophobic or transphobic. He texted me after Carl Weathers passed away. 4 years later, her career in tatters, Carano can't believe it all began with something as meaningless as the pronouns joke. Seriously, this was the start of the end for me. A 20-year career, the blood, sweat, and tears of fighting. I never compromised myself for a job. I never ended in a bad situation where I did anything inappropriate. I had a clean and clear climb to where I got to and was going to just keep going, and this was harmful. Going on to say, if the unforgivable sin in Hollywood is being a person who wouldn't perfectly conform at a time when emotions were running wild in the world, then that's probably not a Hollywood I'll ever belong to. But I think once egos are put aside, Hollywood has the opportunity to grow just like we all do. I think once you're a fighter, you always feel like you're going to be a fighter for the rest of your life. I think I'll be like 80 and shadowboxing down in my garage. I'll have that comeback one day, she says. Carano harbours no regrets about her behaviour. You won't find a perfect person in me, but you will find a person who is doing her absolute best under one of the most aggressive, unnecessary cancellations in Hollywood history. This has been one of the toughest growing spurts of my life, and I don't plan on wasting what I've learned. So what I got from all that article is, you know, she's not sorry for one thing, but she doesn't even think she did anything wrong at all. Like, she can't even understand why anyone would find anything she wrote offensive, and it just must be Disney being part of this like liberal elite blob trying to censor her and cancel her. And what is just funny for me is the lack of self-preservation she has in those situations, because as we know, corporate like wokeness, as they call it, is so hollow. All they wanted her to do was put out a statement that they could have probably written for her, and then they could have kept going. She could have just stopped talking about that stuff, right? And she could just have a whole Disney show to herself. It's literally like one of the biggest bag fumbles of all time, but she couldn't help herself. And that's the whole thing with this whole issue. She was warned multiple times. Pedro Pascal talked to her about it. She had multiple meetings with LGBT people telling her like what she said was wrong. And then they offered to like help her with a statement that she puts out and they can sweep it under the rug and she can continue because Hollywood doesn't actually care about this stuff. They just care about the image to sell stuff, but she still couldn't do that. So like I said, from the conservative ideology, how can she play the victim? But it says it all that she was comparing conservatives to being Jews in Germany because she still thinks like that. She thinks she's being targeted for being a conservative. And I would argue you don't get targeted in Hollywood for being a conservative, and Disney and Lucasfilm do not target you for being a conservative because people like James Arnold Taylor, who played Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars, he's like very, very religious and it appears like quite conservative as well. Still like gets all the Obi-Wan gigs because he doesn't go around talking about, you know, how being a conservative is like being a Jew in Germany. And also part of this being an even bigger bag fumble is that like Lucasfilm as a branch of Disney seem to look after these people the best out of like most companies, in that if you work for them, you're just in. And you see that with Bo-Katan. Obviously, Katie Sackhoff has played her in the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and then she's literally becoming like the main character of one of the biggest TV shows because they like remembered her from before. And then you have people like Sam Witwer who says he always does voices for them, which are often uncredited because they doesn't like him so much. And even with the Ahsoka show, Clancy Brown, who did an animated voice in Rebels, he was playing the same character in the Ahsoka show. It like seems so unnecessary, but they like really seem to like their actors and appreciate them. And even Jon Favreau saying that, you know, this will make you into like a big star. It just seems like insane to me, this person. If you really care about acting and everything so much, how you can fumble it so bad based just on your ego and not willing to be wrong. Obviously, most people can see what she did was bad. And as a left-wing person, I don't think people are beyond redemption, right? So if I read this profile and she was talking about how sorry she was and how she now realizes, like, I don't know, what she said was bad and offensive and how she was just really ignorant about these things, and she talked to Pedro Pascal and then she understood and she's very sorry, regardless of how much you'd buy that, I'd be more inclined to be like, okay, like, give this person another chance. Like, if she is good for a role, like, give her another chance if she sincerely is saying that she regrets what she said. But teaming up with the world's most famous fascist and Elon Musk to sue Disney while continuing to say you regret nothing, I don't have much sympathy for you going broke and not being able to get roles after this, because you just can't move past your ego. You just can't be sorry. And you saying, well, no one would ever call me homophobic, transphobic, all this stuff, just rings so hollow because you've taken no steps to prove otherwise. So let's see what happens. But what I expect to happen is, apologise for my audio going a bit weird there, but yeah, when you have all these people surrounding you telling you how great you are and how you can stick it to woke Disney, you do all the podcast circuit, you collab with Ben Shapiro, they all tell you this, and that's just like your social media bubble as well. I just don't see her getting better anytime soon. So I won't mourn for her career. Didn't think she was a great actress, but I thought like her character in The Mandalorian was okay. And like I said, I do believe in redemption at some point, so maybe she can redeem herself, but it does seem like someone who will never be able to say sorry because of their ego and believing that they're always right. So that's where we're at with the tragedy of Gina Carano. Does this have relevance to other people in Hollywood, conservatives in Hollywood? I would say generally like no. This is like a pretty rare case of a conservative taking it very far. But I would agree that Hollywood projects a certain image around the world. America good, US military good, and very, very openly and outspoken leftist people don't seem to be that common in Hollywood, although I would say there are a ton of actual leftists in Hollywood, and this has pretty much always been the case. But yeah, most of them aren't that outspoken these days because, like Pedro Pascal, I imagine they are a bit worried about their career if they really take a stance. So that is disappointing, but that's just the way it works, it seems. But anyway, that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.